Hi everyone, Jacob here at Heavenly Meadows. Today I wanted to walk you guys through part of the Rabbitry, specifically our setup for the nursery, which is our big yellow building here, and our overnight yard where most of our girls and also younger newborns stay. So this is the main yard, as you can see here, and these are a lot of our Holland Lop and Lionhead girls hanging out. And what we really love about this area is that it used to be a chicken coop, but now we've renovated it a little bit and we've had some success with growing grass down here. But as we keep a lot of girls in this space, they do kill the grass and eat it, but it's really the walking on the grass that tends to kill it in the run. And we have mostly poultry netting running all up the sides and to the ceiling, and also buried in the ground here. You can see some of it sticking out. What we've done is brought in some peat moss and leaves and other compost to kind of bury it, because when the mothers get pregnant, they'll start to dig and try to build nests in the ground, but we don't want them doing that. So if you set it so they can't do that in the ground, what they'll do is more naturally run into the nursery, which you can see there, and they'll pick out one of the nest box, and they may bring in some hay or wood shavings, and then they'll start to pull their fur and build a nest. But then for the rest of the day, they can pop out here, as well as some of the side yards, which I can show you guys in a bit. They can go out that door and into the side to access some of the yards during the day, but we have this as a daytime and nighttime yard for the bunnies. So this is one of our boy yards, and this is Lucky hanging out with Janice here, two of our Holland Lops. And his area is relatively small that he's in at night, but here we have a little cutaway for him, and he can hop out into a slightly larger yard there to give him a little bit more space and the girls that he's with. But having the boys right beside the main yard with the mothers really helps them get used to each other, and it helps with successful mating, as opposed to them never coming into contact or hanging out and then trying to put the bunnies together. And they basically could spend a day, a couple of days, or even a week just getting used to each other, and they won't allow each other to mate. And here's his little bachelor pad upstairs, and his house, which is a good size for a single bunny, a little big for a single bunny, but good too if he's got one or two of the girls with him, so they can all hide in there. They're sleeping at night, or if it's raining. We have a few kind of auto feeder setups that we use, some of this PVC pipe. These are really good. They stay mostly dry when it rains because of the roof here, and they don't let in a lot of moisture. This one isn't the biggest one, but it's good. We also have some kind of cat and kibble auto feeders too, which work pretty well. And we've kind of given up on using the bunny bottles, and we just refill larger water bowls instead, because they stay really clean compared to, I don't know, most of the other things. Even a lot of those bunny bottles, you can see if they're left out in the sun, they'll grow algae in them really quickly, which is gross. And we just can't go around and clean all of those all the time and even check for the algae. So we've stuck with larger water bowls. So here we have some of their auto feeders, and then one of their larger bowls, which is getting kind of funky. It could use a turnover. Typically we're turning these over once a day or every other day, just depending how clean they stay. When the leaves are falling and stuff, it can make them get a little nastier a little sooner. The bunnies absolutely love these little play shoot toys. They don't really go for the wooden horse. I'm not sure why that's out there. And they're being good about leaving the pumpkins alone. So one question we get a lot is, how do you get all the mothers to get along, especially when they're having babies? We find that the space really gives them room to get away from each other. They'll have little spats, but they won't really fight because they can just move away from one another, and they're rarely ever territorial except for right when they're building a nest, and then maybe a week after they've had their babies when they're just newborn. Sometimes some of the girls will try to take over the nursery, but it's usually just one part of the nursery. It won't be the entire thing. But we never have any really serious fights or anything like that, and none of the girls' ears or nose or anything like that ever get damaged. Who do we have hiding under here? Oh, that's Freya. She's one of our keepers that we kept from Helen and Gandalf. And then even when we bring new girls in, we won't see a lot of fighting, and they'll adjust to each other relatively quickly because, again, bunnies are more than likely to just avoid each other if they're not getting along, especially the females. Now the boys we will keep separately, especially when they're older. The boys really have just until maybe 4 to 5 months until they start not liking each other, and if they're around females, they'll tend to fight even sooner compared to if they're just two boys that you might get as pets. That relationship and bonding, it can go smoothly a lot of the times. You'll never see any fighting, but again, it will just depend, and there's no guarantee. More so like with the girls, you can almost always get two girls to bond to each other and get along compared to the boys. And then in the nest building process, the mothers almost exclusively leave each other's nest boxes alone, so they don't go in their territory, they don't sit in their nest box or disturb any of the other babies, and the babies can't really leave the nest box until 2 to 3 weeks. So at that point in time, we'll usually mark their ears or mark them in some way if we have enough of a same breed of bunny or the same color to the point where we don't recognize them anymore and we need to keep track of them a little bit more closely. Here we have Summer. She's one of our retired mothers and one of our first bunnies. Summer's a little under 2. She had a uterine prolapse when she was giving birth one time, but we were fortunate enough to be able to rush her to the vet, and they essentially just spayed her and cleaned her up and sent her home with some antibiotics. So now she's here just running around and basically playing nanny, and she's great to pair with some of our boys when they don't have someone that they're mating with. We can just put Summer in to hang out with them and socialize so the boys don't have to sit alone. And that there is Rosie to the left and then Hera to the right. Rosie always has very large litters for us, usually 7 or 8 she'll have, compared to a normal 3 to 4 with the Lionheads and Holland Lops. And another question we get is with the bunnies being outside, if they ever get fleas or mites. We've never seen any fleas on the bunnies since being here, and we're in the middle of Tennessee, so it hasn't been a problem with us so far. And the mites are concerned both with the skin and occasionally even getting into the ear. And they can, if they're there long enough, the mites can cause deafness. So they're a big concern if you do see your bunny scratching at the ears a lot. But again, we haven't had any trouble so far, which has been really lucky because it would be pretty difficult to treat all of the bunnies for fleas. Hey, Rosie. Bunnies are big on leaves, even some of these older, drier ones here. We try not to bring too many in just to create a small bedding and to keep it from turning into more of a chicken coop in here, and it keeps the ground a little drier. We don't bring too many in because leaves can get mold, of course, if you pile them up, and it does rain quite a bit here. But the rain doesn't really seem to bother any of the bunnies, so even when we do put little houses for them out here or waterproof part of the yard, they tend to not seek out shelter in the rain. Even if it's cold, it just doesn't really bother them that much. is Java here. She's one of our chocolate does. We got Java when she was over a year old, and she's been with us for a few months now. If you just hang out and sit down, you can see that they're willing to come around you and hang out. And if you bring out some good treats, they'll also come around. So we'll have to do that in another video. Hey, Java. Java seems to be shedding part of her coat, you can see, because the seasons are changing. Oh, you're so pretty. Here's another shot of the top of the run here. We have gone around and reinforced with hard cloth wire, which is a square wire here, which is considered to be predator proof for things like raccoon and foxes. But we haven't quite yet made it upstairs, which we're planning to do soon. Okay, so here is kind of the human way out, but we also leave this door propped open to let the girls go roam in some of the other accessory yards most of the time. So you can see if you go out this door, we have another side yard set up for them, and then all the wires also buried in the ground. This wire we haven't done as good of a job as burying, but we're bringing in a lot of leaves, and you can see some walnuts are falling down here, and that kind of helps naturally bury it and not bother their feet as much. This area used to grow really well with grass as well, but I mean, we're rolling into November, and again, with all the rabbits running on it and also eating the grass, it does tend to die out pretty quickly if we let them in an area. So we kind of try rotating them a little bit. Here we just have Charles by himself. He's one of our boys, so he's not in there with the rest of the girls. And then here we have a tunnel built, which isn't super fancy, but you can see it runs very far over to another yard, which is kind of the main play yard for the bunnies, because it's a lot bigger and it takes them a while to kill all the grass over here, and it gives everyone lots of space. So this is where we let the mamas run out during the day, but we're trying to give this yard a break as well to get some new grass growing. That's why another one of our boys is over here by himself for now. So he and Charles are kind of hanging out together. And again, this yard is all poultry netting, which isn't super sturdy, but it's definitely good enough to keep the buns in. And then we've got some wood that lines the entire bit of the yard. Some of this is old barn wood, and then others just 2x4 and some 2x6. And in some places we do put down big rocks, but this yard doesn't have the wire buried, so we do have to be a little bit more careful about letting the buns out here to dig. There's not a lot of digging going on in this yard, but sometimes the moms will go out here and build nests, and if you catch them quickly enough, like moving leaves around or moving hay and grass to build a nest, you can see that, and then we bring them into the nursery, and sometimes we'll shut them in so they're forced to build a nest and have their bunnies in there. And then very rarely we'll find babies that are actually out in the yard, but that's really uncommon, and we'll just take the nest and put it in a nest box and then move the moms into the nursery, which is this is the other way into the nursery here. Here's another shot of the girls' indoor area. I think we measured it was 30 long, and then 7 and some change high, and then 13 foot wide. You can see a lot more of the girls come out and play as you exit. Okay, well that just about wraps up our first tour of the Rabbitry. We have some other areas we want to show you guys, but wanted to start out with the nursery and the overnight yard and kind of show you where all the mamas live together. where they stay at night and hang out during the day.